Bitch is a Bad Word podcast is for informational purposes only and reflects the opinions of the host and guests. It contains explicit content and discusses sensitive topics such as domestic abuse, sexual assault, and violence, which may be distressing to some listeners. Please take care of your emotional well-being while listening. While we strive for accuracy, we make no warranties about the completeness or reliability of the information, and any reliance on it is at your own risk. We do not endorse third-party views and are not liable for any defamatory claims. Listeners should conduct their own research and consult professionals before making decisions. If you or someone you know is in danger, please call 911 or contact the National Domestic Abuse Hotline 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at 800-799-7233 or text START, S-T-A-R-T, to 88788. We've got your back, besties. Caliber Studios has not independently verified the information you're about to hear. Welcome back to this episode of Bitch Sesh. We have an absolute baddie with us today, and she is here to share her story of survival and recovery and thriving and reclaiming her voice. So thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the show. So I want to just get right into it. So you're coming from a small town in Ohio that has a festival called Twins Day or something.
Yeah.
So there's
Twins
not
Day.
a lot of like, I just kind of imagine it very like white bread and very just people kind of keep to their own, and there's not a lot of understanding of anybody that doesn't look like them or act like them or behave like them. So
I feel like, yeah. Except maybe that one time during the year, because if someone's coming from like, Africa or Asia, they might get some culture in Ohio. But aside from then, at the time, they could be more progressive now, but at the time it was not that. So
it's funny, all the kids, like I have elementary school kids, and when something's like, everyone's like, oh, that's so Ohio. Like Skibbity, Ohio. I'm like, what did Ohio do to you guys? Like, you live in California. Like, why is Ohio getting a bad rap? And like, that's like, oh, that's so Ohio. So that maybe they haven't progressed because they're just, that's the where they're going.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I know what they mean. It's like if you've been there, it's like an insider, I guess, thing.
So let's talk about surviving the system. And so you're growing up in a Christian family, single mom. And you're in a place that you're a minority all across, like in all aspects of the word. And you get to LA. So you said you were a serial survivor. Does your abuse start in Ohio? Does it start in LA? Where's your story start?
I had my first like assault when I was 16, and it was in Ohio. And because we were students, so it was like in high school. And how they did it is like in alphabetical order, our lockers. So like you get assigned a locker next to, your people or whoever for like 4 years. So I had 2 more years next to the person because they were my like locker mate, I guess, next door, because we both had ours as our last name. So yeah, that was interesting. And then we had one class together, but that was like one semester. But yeah, for the next 2 years, I was right next door to him. So it started there. That was the first one.
And that's not something you reported or talked to anybody about?
No, I didn't realize what even it was, I don't think, until I came out here, to be honest. And I was trying to unpack why I had like this fear of intimacy in my first relationship that stemmed before even the abuse of my first relationship. And I like pinpointed back to that moment when I was 16. and just being touched in a way that I didn't consent to, and not really understanding, I guess, the lasting impact of it, because it was just like so shocking. So it's kind of just like, how I think I mentalized it at the time was like how if you're walking on the street and someone accidentally bumps into you, um, and you probably won't think about it twice unless your wallet's missing or something. But in this situation, it was like, I guess my innocence in a way was taken in that moment, and I didn't realize how it impacted me until I got into a relationship um, out here, because I didn't start dating until I came out to LA.
It is very impactful when something happens at an age where you don't quite understand it, or it's a first experience, or like there's no one to talk to or talk through it with. And then the abuser isn't going to, like, if you don't say anything, they're like, whoo, got away with that one. Or, so you're just sitting there and then you're re-traumatized every day that you're going to open your locker and you see them, but you don't know what you're going through, I imagine. So it's just like
Yeah.
building in your mind, building on your heart, rewiring parts of your brain that we're learning now has massive impact and implications later. So
Yeah.
so you have that experience that's led you to LA, and then you're in a position where, is it a self-worth feeling? Like why are you having trouble connecting intimately? Like, or do you, and you're not understanding it. So what are you putting yourself in? What situations did you find yourself in?
Well, I feel like I think I've been pretty open in my creative work, in the fact that I had like massive daddy issues. I'm still to this day, I suppose, working through them, if I'm being totally honest. And I think I was looking for someone, and I didn't care necessarily gender wise, but obviously I was more attracted to women than men. So, because I still hadn't been able to act on anything or do anything. And so this is early on, like 18, 19, coming out here. So I think I was just looking for people who had more life experience and felt like someone who, in a way, could take that role of, like, I grew up in a religious household. So like we were very traditional in how, the mom makes the family at home, and then, like, the dad goes out and works and whatever, all that stuff provides. So I think I was looking for a provider in that way, um early on. And it just so happened to be somebody who was a woman, but who was more mass presenting in that. um and I think how it, like, kind of just showed up was just like, when I was started unpacking this later in therapy, it was like that's really where it kind of stemmed from, was my own daddy issues. And like even in the queer community, we throw that term around. Like it's not really gendered. So um that wasn't like, you know, the reasoning behind it was not based on a male or female, but it was just based on what I had been missing, I guess, my whole life, or at least majority of my life up until that point, is what I was like looking for in a partner at the time.
And then you find the person that you think is checking the boxes of like the things you were missing as a young kid. I always want to go back to that. Like when you talk to your young self, what do you want to say to her?
I think for a while I like was trying to figure out what I did wrong to make my dad not want me, because I like remember like so many times when I was young in school, like K through 12, like, there's Father's Day at school and people's dads would come, or like there would just be moments where it was felt a bit more, and I wish I had that, and I thought it was something I did wrong. I never really blamed like my mom. I think some kids do that, but I never did. I blamed mainly myself. And I don't know where that really stemmed from. Maybe it was a self-worth thing, because I think that my self-worth was pretty low. I just felt like it didn't fit in anywhere, because even the people I was told I was, I'm Black, I'm Hispanic, I'm Native American, like I'm not enough though to that community at the time when I was growing up. There was a lot of, I don't want to say, I hate saying jealousy. My mom, if she was here, would be like, there's a lot of jealousy, because I was an early bloomer. And then like, there's the whole colorism thing. And a lot of the people that I grew up with were like darker skin. And because of me being an early bloomer and a tomboy and all these other things, I guess guys will look at me in the same way that these girls like them. So I was bullied a lot, but I didn't know why. I was just thinking it was because, well, I didn't talk a lot either at the time. I was like a quieter, creative kid. So I just figured it was because of that. But my mom would say it's because all these other things I'm talking about. But yeah, I feel like that's where my self-worth issues really stemmed from, was just not feeling like I had any kind of community because I just didn't fit in or was accepted in the ways that I saw my peers at the time I grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
I will honestly say I see that even a bit now, but as an adult, I kind of just like, if I like even sense it, I kind of just keep it pushing because I don't want to like get, it's different when you're an adult. You have a choice. And as a kid, I had to go to school. So that's what the law said. So I wasn't getting out of that, but yeah.
Well, and it's probably a hard thing to hear from your parent that the reason why people are not connecting with you is because your boobs are big. You know, you're
Yeah.
like, wait, what? Like, I can't help this. So like, you know, you hear the like, or your skin isn't dark enough, or you're this, like that doesn't make sense. So then you're like, well, I can't do anything about what's happening. So then it must be a me problem. When now, as a adult with, you know, fully developed frontal cord like lobe, you're like, wait, it's not, it's a them problem. I'm perfect the way I am. And if you accept me, you accept me. If you don't, fuck off. And that's easier to say now, but we're sitting here with like all the childhood shit that comes with it. And then you're putting yourself in a situation where, did you find that like the one person that gave you just a little bit different attention, or the one person, like those were the people you were attracted to? Was there red flags that you were choosing to ignore?
I actually fit in a lot with the emos and goths, which I think is pretty funny. But looking back in Ohio, we were all fascinated with the West Coast, to be honest. Like, I remember, like, there was this whole wave of just like, uh, everybody wanted to wear like North Faces and what's that brand called, like Patagonias, and that was like so LA. Like, I know this now because I'm out here, but I look back like we wanted to be LA so bad. We weren't like, and we were in Ohio. So I feel like I fit in with the emos and goths because I hated that style for one, but for two, I love the music like Paramore, Green Day, like all these, you know, artists and stuff. And the people who were into that were mainly like goth and emo, and they actually were just like kind of like all hues and backgrounds of people. I look back now and I'm like, that was definitely, some of them were early trans and they probably transitioned at this point now, but just in how they were carrying themselves in dressing and presenting. And there were some people that did change their names too. And so I was like, we never had the language, but it was all happening. And there was people that were dating, but we didn't call it that because it was still so taboo.
Okay.
But I think that the emos and goths kind of took me in. So
Hey besties, it's Lindsay from Bitch is a Bad Word podcast, and Cozy Earth sent me the most amazing sheets ever. They are soft, they are silky, they keep me cool, and the color is so stunning. They've got your back with a 40% off coupon using our code word BESTIES at checkout. They've got sheets, towels, pajamas, everything you need to turn your home into a sanctuary at CozyEarth.com. If they offer you a post-purchase survey, let them know that you heard about Cozy Earth right here on Bitch is a Bad Word podcast. Check them out, CozyEarth.com, 40% off using our code word BESTIES. So you find yourself in this serial abuse, and then how long is the abuse happening to you? Is it just every relationship? Was it one in particular? Can you talk about that?
it was definitely every relationship. Because I think I felt like well, first of all, I didn't have anything to really go on. I think some people talk about having that example in their parents, like 40 years married or something like that, and like actually being able to see it. I didn't have that anywhere. My whole family, like all the women in my family, have been divorced. Every single one, all my cousins, all my aunts, like all of them have been divorced. And then my grandparents were the ones that stayed together, but it was very known before they passed, they were in separate rooms. So it was not, they weren't really together. It was more so like, it's the end of their life, so they're not going to do anything else now. But I think I didn't have that modeled on top of like just not understanding how to build a relationship either. I feel like there's just a lot of tools I was missing, that I didn't know. And I was just young and I was dating older. I always dated older. So I still do, but just now I know different things. But I think that I needed to figure out more of who I was instead of just kind of coming out here and just hopping into the first, relationship where someone gave me attention, because that was the thing, and it was good attention. It wasn't like bad intention, at least to me. But obviously the intentions kind of quickly turn into like control and manipulation and all these things that felt like love to me at the time, but now I'm like, I know that obviously that wasn't the case now, but at the time it felt like love. I also had never, how it was presented to me, and I think that's still a thing these days, is like women can't abuse women. Like it just never was a thought in my head that that could be it. Because even when I've seen it depicted at the time on TV, it was like a man beating his wife or something. So, and I never actually saw a person of color either get abused. So honestly, I would venture to even say I thought it was kind of like just like a white thing. So it was like all these things compiled together just never registered to me that that was something that was happening to me, even though it happened back to back. I'm a long relationshipper, so I've only been in two, but they were both like 2 years, 2.5 years long. And it was just like back to back. And it was literally like the same people in just different form, just back to back. And mine was mainly like, I had physical abuse, but I say it had more emotional than anything, because I'm just an emotionally like connected person. That's how I work more than anything else. And then financial for sure was a big one, which I talk a lot about, I feel like. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I have so many boxes I check with the different things. And now posted, I'm still dealing with one of them stalking me. So yeah, it's just been kind of a never ending loop of that. But I haven't been in a relationship in like 5 or 6 years. So yeah. And I've been on dates, just haven't been in a relationship. And then I've also like, I didn't take an oath of celibacy, but I've been celibate during that time too. So
Do you believe that that's a choice you've made because of your past traumas?
yeah, no, definitely. And I feel like too, um, I say a lot of things about the Christian views, because I think there's a lot of hypocrisy in that community. But also, I do believe in dating with some kind of intention. So I do believe in marriage for as long as we're allowed to have it, with the way things are going right now. And I want to be able to be married to somebody. That is important to me. That's just what commitment looks like to me. So that's what I want, is someone that eventually we're gonna date, like we're gonna get married. So I think it's mainly the intention, but also it's definitely the traumas too, and the fear of that. And the queer community is so small too. So chances are whoever you're dating knows or knew your ex in some way, shape, or form. So it's just kind of, it can get kind of messy in my experience.
So you have this person that's stalking you. Are you in the legal system about it, or it's just something you're trying to manage on your own?
I have been through the legal system about it. What's hard is that I've had the in-person stalking issue, but it's turned to like cyber stalking too. And that is just harder to prove, when, especially if it's not coming directly from that person's account. And even if you trace an IP address, it has to trace back to that person, or some way we got to connect the dots and all that, which is just a lot and exhausting. And I've been navigating it through obviously the restraining order process, but I have friends who dealt with stalkers much more aggressive than mine. So I've been kind of leaning on them for support. And I mean, it kind of for me, it's one of those things where I'm like, when I'm seeing that one of my friends has the same stalker as Ivanka Trump, and that person's still doing their thing. So it's one of those things where I'm like, if this person who also stalked, Ivanka Trump, who was stalking my friend, is still doing their thing. I don't want to say I have to kind of live with it, but I'm kind of learning how to just better manage, I guess, my expectations with it. Because before I was like, okay, eventually they'll be gone. I was like, eventually they'll be gone is kind of looking like not until, they, are gone from Earth, whatever way that happens. Because it's just, unless the laws change, it's just very difficult when it's not like they're coming to your door or showing up at your work in person, when it's like on social media or any kind of email or anything like that that's not very clearly them. It's very, very hard in my experience to get any justice for that.
But it's one of the scariest situations because the statistics on stalking is not very good. So definitely take care of yourself and your surroundings. I mean, the cyber stalking is, we're experiencing it. We block people that we know are very curious about what we're doing on our show, and then they still find ways, and you're like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Just move on with your life. Like, just please leave us alone so we can just feel better. But that's not their intention. So just take care with that situation, because I don't know. That's the scary thing. So I want to ask you, you were homeless when you first arrived in LA. Was there, abuse in the homeless community, or did you feel protected there? Like, I've not been homeless, and I have just visions of like, it must be dangerous for a woman to be in that situation. Were you in danger?
I actually think I got really fortunate because I had people that really looked out for me in the homeless community, that I still know today, and they still are, unhoused. And I don't want to put it out there like it's a choice, but there is a community out there, people who, whether at this point in time they're like, I don't want a house, because of the climate, the way everything's going in economy, or they just don't know how to save, budget and like work their way to that. They know what it takes to have a tent up or like live in their car or an RV and like get food and all that. So that's just, I say their choice in that. But then there's, of course, the ones who don't have a choice, and those are like the veterans and LGBT youth that get kicked out of their homes because of who they are. My situation was, who I moved out to work for, I was living with, helping her with her clients, and like her clients in entertainment, like she's a talent manager. And then she just like kind of was like, okay, I want my house back. And I ended up on the street from that. I wasn't being paid for the work I was doing with her. So it was a culture shock for me when I even moved out, because I've never seen a homeless person before. We didn't have them in Ohio that I saw in my whole time I was there. I'm sure they're there now, but when I was growing up, they weren't visibly seen where I was at. And then I was nervous at first, because I think anyone who hasn't been thinks are automatically kind of like how it's portrayed, I think on TV maybe too.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be dangerous. And I'm sure there are stories that of people, getting hurt and whatnot. But I did not feel unsafe when I was unhoused on the street. I actually felt more unsafe in the shelters I stayed at than on the street, which I think is mainly because the shelters that I stayed at, I saw staff taking advantage of people in ways that they shouldn't. And on the street, I think, at least where I stayed, I actually stayed on Skid Row, by LA Mission specifically. And I think where I stayed, those people that have been there for so long. It reminded me of like, the old time movies where it's like everyone on the block knows everybody, and so they're just like hanging out and having barbecues. They just don't have homes. That's really the vibe it was for me when I was there. And I just really stayed there. And then I was working too, so no one at work knew what was going on, because I had it down to a science, which is what I did learn from being unhoused. Like, people get gym memberships and stuff, and you shower and you only take what you actually need in your bag. And there's clever ways of hiding things to where they don't get stolen by other unhoused people or just people in general. So I had it down to a science, and I was able to do that for a decent period of time before I got into a shelter. I did get into a shelter actually through a church, so I will credit that. I got into the Covenant House of California, which is still around, um, through my church, and I stayed there for like a year. And they had like this whole program that like helps you get an apartment and whatnot. But I didn't, while I was physically on the street, I didn't feel unsafe, and I didn't see, like, there were some people that will let you know, just don't go over to, block whatever at this time or whatever. um but I didn't see anything or feel unsafe myself while I was on Skid Row, at least.
Hi, I'm Sarah Wayne Callies, and I played Dr. Sarah Tancredi on Prison Break.
And I'm Paul Edelstein, and I played Agent Paul Kellerman on Prison Break. Please join us on our rewatch podcast, Prison Breaking, with Sarah and Paul.
We're going to have all kinds of guests and never-before-told stories, so follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can subscribe to our watch party on the link there. We can't wait to see you there.
And follow us on Instagram at Prison Break Podcast. See you there.
So do you find, I want to go back a little bit to understanding for our besties listening, like same-sex partner violence is, what are the stats? What do you know in your experience? How real, prevalent, we say 1 in 3. I don't know how those stats like look between same sex or women of color or men of color. We just say like 1 in 3. That's all I need to know. I don't really need to know what your sexual preference is. I just know you're not safe, and you're most likely the one person who's going to kill you is the person you're in bed with. So in your community, how prevalent is it? And then how quiet is it?
Definitely. I mean, I took a counselor advocate course last year through Peace Over Violence, which they had like the latest stats. But I think what's kind of disappointing is what we've noticed. And I say we as in like activists and advocates and organizations I work with, like Peace Over Violence and Free From, is that they don't really target that data. So we are looking at data sometimes from like 2017, 2018, 2019. And as we all know, everything increased during the pandemic. So to not have all that listed in the same way as it is, I guess, for like heterosexual folks, it's kind of sucky. But I do know from what I heard last year, and what I know personally, that 1 in 3 is definitely, I would say, for the lesbian space, that is pretty low. I think it's 1 in 2. I know every person I personally know right now, and I just had this conversation yesterday because one of my dear friends, who's like an influencer, made a video talking about this, and just like how it's like it's coming up more and more and more, and how it's just frustrating her, and that like our community is more silent on it in more ways than we should be. And I think that's because we have so many things already working against us, that we don't want to like give people, I guess, a reason to tear us more apart. But in that, we're just honestly protecting certain abusers, especially influential ones. And so she was making a video about that. So I just thought it was interesting because I was literally just thinking about the fact that I had another conversation with another friend earlier that day, and we were talking just about, Pride coming up and certain events where these abusers are just getting paid to be at. And it's like, people know, and it's just frustrating because there's so many people who have said like me too in that sense. And it just hasn't been dealt with or received. So I think that we just, as a community, as queer folks specifically, need to address it. I think more than we hold our allies to, since we know what's going on and we're in it, like we're in the trenches of it. We all know it. And I know for myself, I'm one of very few, and depending on who you ask, I'm very unpopular because I know what's going on. I know what's going on, and I say something about it. And I choose specifically not to work with certain individuals because of what I know, and speaking up on it. And I know people feel some type of way about that. And that does, get back to me. But I feel like I would rather be vocal about it than an enabler, because that's exactly what it is. And I know people get weird when you're like, oh, they're no better than the abuser, but you're not. Like, if you know what's going on and someone's telling you what is happening and you just think it's impossible because they're on tour and they have 12 million followers, then like you're a lunatic. Like you are no better than them, because it does happen, and they do that because they know they can get away with it. But yeah, bisexual women actually, to my knowledge, have like 68%. Lesbian women, it's 56%. And bisexual ones, I think it's a given. Why? Because if it's not a woman doing it in their relationship, then it's probably a man. And so those statistics I know are higher. And in knowing a few bisexual women, at least ones that have come out to me, I'm sure I know more. But that, people kind of use bisexuality, and there's biphobia, and I can go on and on about that because that's another issue in our community, of like they use it as like kind of like a fetishizing type thing where, oh, like, you can like be with me and my girlfriend and stuff. Like they don't really respect it. So it's like these women get taken advantage of a lot, and not really as respected. In my perspective of it, as respected as like if you just pick a side. That's how it's like said in it. So I am very vocal about also the issue with the bisexual folks, because that's just not okay. And then trans, of course, those numbers are, yeah, I'd say they're about the same as the lesbian ones, but there's not also a lot of data on that either. But it's just a mess, to say it nicely. It is a mess. It is a mess. And I just want to hold our community a bit more accountable than we do, because it's not going away. I think we kind of think if we push it under the rug and fight against the current administration for the millions of other things going wrong, that it's going to go away. And then it's like, we're at 1 and 2. We should have never been at 1 in anything. But to get to 1 and 2 means a lot had to go wrong.
Right. And if you push shit under the rug, we know you have just a lumpy ass rug. So we
yeah.
We got to fix that shit.
We do got to fix it.
So all this, you have this amazing story. You've serial survivor. I love that statement, just because it really puts it in perspective for people that, it can happen multiple times. When we're not talking about it, we say there's no safety in staying silent. We're amplifying the voices of those people who are, silenced or not allowed or afraid to speak. And I really appreciate all the work that you're doing for survivors in general, but most specifically for the queer community, and understanding that, you're somebody that somebody could listen to right now and feel heard and seen and loved. And that's super important. So I'd like to just highlight a little bit of the work you're doing, and share that, where your resources, where we can find you, where Bestie can, give you a call, reach out, whatever, and hopefully connect and feel like they've got you've got their back.
Yeah, so you can find me at Titeanya, which is Titeanya on Instagram. That's really the only site I am on. And then I have a production company called Womanography Entertainment, or just Womanography, which is let me make sure I can spell WOMXNOGRAPHY. And we have several like subsidiaries and initiatives, such as Her House of Horror, which amplifies women in horror. And we do a lot of like articles and stuff covering like sexual assault and, violence within our communities, and through like a trauma-informed lens. We do a lot of work over there. And then recently I partnered with Free From, and we are doing like a bunch of cool stuff over at something I hope to be a nonprofit soon. But right now we're just like a safety defense fund, where we're giving safety kits to survivors to help exit relationships, but then also to do prevention. And that's like under the Gold Star Society, which is also on Instagram. So we're doing everything we can to give back, and to have an ecosystem, and just partner with people who've been on the ground far longer than me that are doing it. So yeah, I think that's everything.
That's so amazing. What's in the safety kit?
So we're working with a couple of places like Beyond Defense Fund, and we're going to get stun guns. And all this is going to be like talked about in terms of like how to be safe about it, depending on your state. We don't do international, but we'll have stun guns. We'll have like stuff for like, I feel kind of funny talking about this, but like the gouging and protecting of like, the yourself. If like you're in a situation, you could take somebody's eyes out. So I forget what those are called, but we have those. We have like testers for testing your drinks at like a bar or wherever you're at, just to make sure they're not spiked. We have pepper spray, of course, which is the classic one most people I think have. And then we're working on just better ways of teaching self-defense as well, and making those classes not acceptable, but accessible in LA to survivors and folks. But yeah, that's the start of the kits. We're going to have a lot more, but that's what's been confirmed so far.
That is a badass kit. I was like, it's not just like tampons and freaking body wash. You're like,
no.
We're like brass knuckles and fucking stun gun. Okay. There you go, girl. Like, let's get it.
Sometimes you got to go there. So
yeah, I love it. Let's fucking go. That's what I say. To protect yourself. That's amazing. Well, I have absolutely enjoyed all of our time together, and you're a badass, and what you're doing for everyone, for all of us. So thank you for being brave and coming on our show, sharing your story, sharing your resources, and then just being able to turn your, pain into purpose. And I think that that's just a beautiful thing. So I look forward to keep, I'm not going to say keep watching you, because I'm trying to have any stalker references and anything, but you'll know I'm watching. I look forward to just keeping the conversation going and sharing resources and having people and our besties in our community reach out to you and know that you've got their back. So that's really cool.
Yes, thank you for having me, and thank you for all the work you all are doing. I love supporting you guys, so let's get it for sure.
I love it. Okay, well, happy Friday. I hope to talk to you soon, and thank you for joining us on this episode of Bitch Sesh.
Happy Friday. Thank you.
Bitches being bad.